Hi folks, Robert J. E. Simpson here once again. Thank you as ever for stopping by. In the last vlog, I was talking to you about the RMS Titanic, since we're marking the anniversary this week, and my own long history with the ship itself and some of the family stories that we have connecting me with that narrative. But I also mentioned that this has been a big part of my life now since about 2011. And back in 2011, I was developing projects for my small publishing press, Avellard Publishing. And one of the projects that came across my desk was a revisit of a Victorian novel called The Lost Liner. You see this book here by a chap called Robert Cromie. It was published in 1898, and Cromie was a man from Clough in County Down, which was very close to where I was living at the time. And he'd been a writer for many, many years and developed a number of science fiction stories, including Plunge into Space and The Crack of Doom, which had various allusions and sort of connections with the works of Jules Verne and H.G. Wells. And if you've never heard of him, he's certainly an interesting character and well worth exploring. And some of his books are highly collectible today as well. So if you see one on a bookshelf, pick it up. So he'd written this story in 1898. And my colleague at Queen's University at the time, a man called Dermot Kennedy, had suggested it to me because we were coming up to the centenary of Titanic's sinking, and there were a number of parallels that had been pointed out before between the novel and the ship itself. The novel concentrates on a ship called the SS Maury, which is on a journey from San Francisco to Auckland. The ship itself is deemed unsinkable, and then it gets caught in a typhoon, and basically all the crew on board and a lot of the crew and the passengers lose their lives, and it's a bit of a disaster situation around that. And during the story as well, the captain shoots one of the passengers, and there is a story that connects to Titanic that suggests the captain or perhaps one of the other members of crew actually killed one of the passengers with a gunshot as well. So it was an interesting little book. It hadn't been in print for well over a century, and it was just the sort of thing that I love to get my hands into. I love a little bit of literary archaeology, so delving into something that's known about but maybe isn't so widely accessible. And so I spent the time working with Dermot, getting the book scanned, getting it retyped up, and then we eventually published it in April 2012, just in time for the centenary, in this lovely little edition. You can see it behind me as well here. Yeah, and it's also available as an ebook, and it's still something I'm ridiculously proud of. Now, whilst the Maury and Titanic were dissimilar, I did borrow an old photograph of Titanic for the cover illustration, deliberately emphasising that association with the ship itself. Cromie himself was very, very interested in ships at the time. It comes through in lots of his books. There's lots of mentioning about the shipyards. He himself was living not too far away from Harland and Wolff at the time, where a lot of shipbuilding was going on, and ships just constantly appear in the books themselves. So yeah, very, very interesting. Certainly well worth exploring, and definitely a book that I'm still very proud of having been involved with. I keep on meaning to publish more of Cromie's books. It's something that every year I talk about doing as a little project. I have not got around to actually producing one of them yet, but hopefully in the next year that'll start to happen, because some of the books have been inaccessible for a very, very long time. I think they are interesting. I think they are a nice little kind of note in terms of sort of Irish literary history that's been forgotten about, and I love sort of just revisiting stuff like this. There are other stories, there are other prescient narratives about the Titanic disaster as well. Perhaps the most famous of those is the book by J. Morgan Robertson, Futility, otherwise known as The Wreck of the Titan. And in it, he basically predicts a ship which is very, very similar to Titanic in terms of scale and description, a ship called the Titan. It was very, very, very well known. There was also an author on board called W.T. Stead, and Stead had written a couple of short stories about very similar disasters as well. So I can't never quite get my head around whether or not this is just something that is in the mind at the time, because this is sort of changing technology, the scale is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, or if these guys had genuine premonitions. And, you know, I think I've already discussed about my own interest in the mysterious and the macabre. So that obviously tickles a few little boxes for me as well. Anyway, that's today's blog. I'll keep it nice and short until tomorrow or the next day, when I talk about something else. You know where to find me, usual channels. Till then, bye bye.